Great. Welcome, everybody, all 20 participants, those of you who I can see on screen, those of you who I can't. It's wonderful having you all here for our first Zoom in of this season. Some of you I know are veterans of this Zoom in experience. Some of you are new. It's wonderful to see those who are familiar to this Zoom conversation style, and we welcome all of you for whom this is a first time. I will occasionally pause to let folks in. So what we're going to do today, my name is Zach Berkman. I'm the producing artistic director at People's Light. I think we build this as, since it was the first one of the season, as a little bit of a sneak preview of our season ahead. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we are joined, our special guest today is Nell Bang-Jensen, who is waving, for those of you who can see her waving. She is the director of our upcoming production of Christmas Carol. And she is also the artistic director at Theater Horizon in Norristown, if you've had the pleasure of attending any of the performances and productions there. And it's wonderful having Nell on board for this project, and in all ways possible. She's a really outstanding human, as well as a wonderful artist, so it's really terrific. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the season, and then we're going to talk to Nell a little bit, and then open it up for any questions that you all may have, either about the season, about Christmas Carol, about People's Light. Don't ask me very much about the Phillies, but I'm going to try to get you, off this thing in time to watch the beginning of the game. And please don't ask me anything about what's going to happen with the speakership. I have no idea in the Congress what in the world is going on. So that is beyond me. So welcome all of you. People's Light, sort of emerging out of COVID chaos, started doing splitting up our seasons into two series, Series 1 and Series 2. Some of us call it the Fall-Winter series and the Spring-Summer series. The reason behind this was sort of, there were internal and external reasons. One is that we were learning a lot from patrons that it was harder to plan so far ahead. Just both the anxieties and concerns of ongoing COVID concerns, just the nature of how life has changed, that planning that far ahead was getting more challenging. So we recognized that and wanted to try to sort of shorten the time period between making a decision to come to something and seeing it. And the other, in all honesty, is because it is so challenging right now to figure out how to budget for a season in the theater. These days, it used to be you could, budget 3 years out and have a pretty predictable sense of how many people were going to come to see your shows, and give or take. And now we're realizing that there's a lot more variables and a lot more unknowns and uncertainties as we go. So this allows us to make the decisions about the second half of the season a little bit later, when we have more information, sort of financial information about where we are. So what we're going to do is we've announced everything that's up until March. And then we are announcing the rest of the season in January. Randy put in the chat, why did you change to 7? I think you mean 7 productions during the year. 7 what? Oh, 7 o'clock as the start time? Very good question too. Yes, I think we should have like a speech and debate class over the starting time of performances. I don't know, Nell, what time Theater Horizon is starting. We had a lot of
7:30, and I wish we were 7, actually. I think 7's a great time.
We have had a lot of people who have complained about it being at 7 because they're trying to come from work and dinner and all the things. And we have also had a lot of people who were talking about it being too late when the reason why they weren't going home is they wanted to go home before 10 o'clock. And while, like our show right now, Bones is only 88 minutes, Christmas Carol is only 2 hours, it's still mentally, for some folks, the 7:30 show meant that they weren't getting home until after 10, and they were letting us know that was a reason for their not returning to the theater. So we're experimenting with this, and I don't know, Randy, you may tell us, we may be part of the group that's wishing it was later.
I work, and you don't get out exactly at a certain time anymore, and then it's a half-hour commute. You don't even have time to go for a snack and coffee.
Yeah.
And by the time it's over, it's too late. It's great for those that are retired, but if you're working, it really, really makes it difficult.
I appreciate that. I think we are collecting all the feedback about this and letting our patron engagement folks know about it, letting all the staff know about it, and I suspect there'll be variations. One of the other things we heard was that people wanted it to be consistent, that they didn't like, for a while there it would be like there was 7:30s on the weekdays, 8 o'clock on the weekends. People were arriving at 8 o'clock on the weekdays and feeling like they missed the first half hour. So
that's people being like too lazy to look at what they're signing up for. I mean, to me, that's inexcusable for people that like, well, I don't look at my ticket, therefore the rest of the world should change to make my life easier.
Yeah.
The me world.
I hear it. Thank you. So yeah, as I'm saying there, so the series 1, and then we will announce series 2 in January. But for season 1, what we have happening right now, running on our Steinbright stage, is Bones. Now, a question for those of you who I can see, because I know there's a number of you who I can't see. If you are able to let me know in some way, have you seen Bones or not?
Not yet.
Not yet. Some folks, yes. So a pretty healthy mix. I may call on some of you if you feel like I'm not describing Bones well enough. But Bones is written by our Associate Artistic Director, Steve H. Broadnax III. For those of you who have seen other of Steve's work, Steve directed our productions of The Mountaintop, of Skeleton Crew, of Mudrow, as well as his own musical, Bayard Rustin, Inside Ashland. This is also a piece that Steve has written that's in the social horror genre, sort of, if you've seen films like Get Out or Candyman or things like that have been coming out that are sort of talking about social issues and especially issues regarding race, using the horror genre as a way of exploring some of these dynamics. Steve was really excited by the films like this and trying to figure out, can he put scary on stage? And so a lot of what the exploration has been is about trying to put scary on stage. The play was being developed literally up to 2 hours before the opening night performance, which is actually the 5th performance in production. Right now it's where it is for us. We hope that it also will have a life beyond us. The response has been terrific. We just got a wonderful Barrymore recommended thing. I have mixed feelings about the Barrymores, but what I loved is some of the comments that people have been saying about it, which is really revealing that the effort that Steve was trying to make and the story he wanted to tell is coming across. And that's really exciting. So those of you who haven't seen it, I hope you will. And those of you who have, we may circle back to hear a little bit about it without giving away any spoilers, because this is definitely one where you have to be careful about the spoilers. Then after that, we're starting rehearsals for Christmas Carol this coming Tuesday. And that will be running just before Thanksgiving through to New Year's. And for those of you who are panto lovers, don't despair. Pantos will continue to be our signature tradition at People's Light. We're in the midst of working with the same team who made Alice in Wonderland last year. They're doing a version of Peter Pan called Peter Pan Toe. I know. And so that's in development. That will happen next year. There's conversations already with Michael Ogborn and Catherine Peterson, who are sort of our early panto makers, about making ones, or at least maybe revisiting some other ones that they've already done, like Cinderella, we're hoping. So the plan now is to periodically sprinkle in a Christmas Carol to help us develop new pantos along the way, and also because we find that there are audiences for pantos that don't want to go to Christmas Carol, and audiences for Christmas Carol that aren't interested in seeing a panto. And this way we get to serve and engage more of the public around us. This is also true in terms of school groups. It's very interesting because we have a lot of young people who come to our holiday shows. I think there's already over 11 school districts who will be coming to Christmas Carol. And what's interesting is, again, similarly, some schools shy away from anything that has any sort of denomination in its title. And so they will not go to Christmas Carol and will see the pantos, and others that will not go see the pantos and are very eager to see Christmas Carol. So it allows us to also engage with more of our school partners, which is really important to us. And I'll speak a little bit more about that as we follow that up. So after Christmas Carol, and we'll talk more about Christmas Carol in just a minute, is a production called Small, that for those of you who are veterans of People's Light, who saw maybe a decade ago our productions of Barcelona or our production of Fallow, the lead actor of that, Robert Montano, has created this solo piece that just did incredibly well off Broadway in New York, and will be coming to us first before touring various other places around the country. And it is his life story, essentially. He was a young man who really wanted to be a horse jockey. And at the time that he really fell in love with the idea of racing horses, he was just at the cusp of being too big to be a jockey. And much of his early life was trying to stay small and stay small enough, which is why the title of the play is called Small, to be able to continue his life racing horses. So part of the story is telling that part of it. But what's interesting about Bobby is he also loved to dance. And ultimately, when he realized he was too big to be a horse jockey, he ended up going to dance school and ended up on Broadway in Cats and in various other shows. And so it's a show that is really sort of following the story of a racehorse jockey turned Broadway dancer and an actor, but also the story really of coming of age, of what it is to think you have one dream and discovering another, of the communities that sort of the paralleling communities of the racetrack world and the theater world. It's really, really lovely. The Wall Street Journal wrote a rave about it if you get WSJ anywhere. So we're really excited to have Bobby back in the area to do that play, and you won't want to miss that. And then the last play in our series 1 is a piece by Christina Anderson called "The Ripple, the Wave That Carried Us Home." And that one is directed by Danya Washington, who is coming to us from Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And this is a play that's actually has been done and will continue to be done all around the country. I keep waiting to find out that's coming to New York, because I think it will eventually, and it'll be huge, and we'll probably have 4 big stars in it. So we feel fortunate to be producing it before that all happens. And Patrice McLean is going to be starring in our production. Patrice was in our production of The Mountaintop and in Skeleton Crew. Wonderful, wonderful actor who's been based in Chicago and other places. And this is really a family drama, and really a sort of a reconciliation, parents and daughter and mother, daughter and father, but it's all within the backdrop of the desegregation of swimming pools in the Midwest. And what we were really intrigued by is I'm beaming here from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, where we have a history here of segregated swimming pools. We work closely with the communities in Westchester, where there's a history of segregated swimming pools. That topic has been really rising to the surface in many different places and for many different reasons. And so we're really struck by sort of the timely nature of this play in terms of what the subject matter that they're all wrestling around, at the same time as it really is this beautiful family drama that we are doing. And it also works for many ages. So it is the play that's running that we're able to bring middle schools and high schools to. And we've already, fortunately, I think we're already completely sold out on the student matinees for that production, which is wonderful and exciting. A lot of what we were sad to do. The play is called "The Ripple, the Wave That Carried Us Home" by Christina Anderson. And it's really terrific. And Deb, which one are you stage managing this year? I'm forgetting now.
That one.
That one. Excellent. Thoughts?
I thought it carried me home. Is it us?
Oh, me. You're probably right. Carried me home.
Okay.
I get swept away in it, Deb, myself. So I added the us. So that's really the plays in the first half of the season, and then we will announce series 2 in the second half. Though maybe I will just say that the presence of David Strathairn in this group is a little teaser for the second half of the season, because keep your eye out for that. There's a wonderful new play that we're going to be producing in the spring that David will be part of, and maybe we'll get him to come back to one of these Zoom occasions to talk about that. So that's sort of that picture of things. Do you have any questions about the season before I shift over to talking to Nell and Christmas Carol? Jacob, you're amazing. You're doing this on the train. Okay, so Jacob wrote, with trends in theater being less season ticket holders and more one-off shows, does that change what shows get chosen to be brought into people's light? That is an outstanding question. And I will share with you that I had a conversation yesterday with a person who's a commercial producer in New York, who also he got his sort of money and plays creating some of the ticketing companies that we know of, that we use, like that are like Ticketmaster, but that Broadway uses and various other theaters off Broadway uses. And therefore he has access to a lot of the data around the country of ticket buying patterns and subscription patterns. And you're absolutely right. There are fewer and fewer people who are wanting to buy multiple plays at a time. And the way that a lot of the subscription model worked, as we call it, in the regional theater was that, we knew that if we put out one or two plays that everyone would go like, I really want to see that, they might buy the whole kit and caboodle of 6 to 8 plays, and so you knew get the two that you want, and then maybe you'll be surprised by the other 4 or 5, and it meant that there was an audience that was really exploring and discovering work that they might not immediately see if they were just doing one-offs. What we're seeing right now is many more people who are just wanting to pick the play that they want to see. It makes total sense. That's the way we now get most of our streaming. That's the way we get most of our films. And so, yes, it is impacting across the field the way that people are programming, because you can no longer assume there's going to be a large group of people who are going to see everything you do. Every project is now something you're needing to really invite and welcome and engage people in individually. There are certainly downsides to that. There's and marketing, and the work on marketing shoulders and the work on other people is much tougher. On the other hand, it does give us an ability to be sort of have more of a variety, because there's a place like People's Light, that we have lots of community partners who we have been working really closely with and identifying what are the kind of stories and subject matter and things that they care about. And we have our subscribers who we continue to be, in dialogue with and excited to be talking with about what they're interested in, and other cohorts and communities and constituents who are voicing their interests. And what we're now trying to do is a little bit more of a quilt of productions that may not appeal. They may not be that all 7 appeal to everybody. But if we can get you on 3, that's our big hope. If we can get you here 3 times a year, then you are a stakeholder. You are someone who clearly cares about the future of our organization, who are building memories with us. And that's now a lot more how we're focusing on programming, in terms of how are we building stakeholders, how are we getting people here to cross the bridge 3 different times and go like, I feel really comfortable at People's Light, and I know that I will see stories that interest me, engage me, and then maybe I'll try something new. Maybe I'll do something different, because I've now earned, we've earned your trust in that process. There was a question in the chat about, do ticket prices impact things? To some degree, that's part of what they're learning, but there's the Taylor Swift argument right now, which is, people will say that they can't afford a ticket to the theater, but they'll spend $1,000 to see Taylor Swift. It's a bit of a specious argument, because the experience of seeing Taylor Swift is a different one, and has different cultural collateral and all the things. But what's interesting about it, and what this friend of mine who I was talking to yesterday said, is what is different is an audience member will go see Taylor Swift on Friday night, we'll see Wicked Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, and then want to go to a museum or see dinner on Sunday. It used to be that same person would see 3 plays in a row. So on the one end, the fewer people are seeing the theater. There's a reduction in the number of people going to theater. On the other end, we're seeing more people who are newcomers to theater attending theater than ever before. So there's this interesting dichotomy of dynamics happening, where if, from a very selfish standpoint, if we can really excite the 30% of theater goers right now that are brand new, to both regional theater and Broadway. If we can really excite, then there's a real future. And if we can't, then there's going to be real headwinds and challenges ahead. But the ticket price is minimal. I don't know, Nell, if you find this at Theater Horizon, but like there's a threshold. There's too much. There's too much, but below too much, there's a wide range.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think, people need to feel like it's affordable in their lives, but I think largely people's decision about whether or not to go to the theater in a given night is based on time more than money and how they want to spend their time.
Yeah, I think we're finding time is dynamic, and what is the event of going that to them feels like that's worth getting off the couch, and that holds the possibility of something that they might want to talk about the next day. Because I think the process of watching a streaming thing is much more private. Yes, people talk about, did you see that show? But there's a lot less appointment television these days, in terms of it's just saying, have you watched Stranger Things? Yes, I watched Stranger Things. Have you binged on this? But there isn't the sense of, were you there when? And and that sort of excitement of, I saw it last night. Did you see it last night? Or, it's only here for 3 weeks, what that experience is. And that theater can offer in a really distinctive way. And we are seeing that when a play has that sort of cachet to it, that people will come. It's more when it feels like they haven't made a good argument for me to get off the couch, and spend a lot more money than the cost of watching, Ted Lasso. And I get it. I love Ted Lasso. So I'm with that crowd. Any other questions about that? Great. I'm going to shift to Nell. So first, thank you for joining us, Nell.
Thank you for having me.
And for those of you who joined us late, Nell Bang-Jensen is our director for our upcoming production of A Christmas Carol. It is an adaptation that I wrote and composed. For those of you who joined us when we first reopened the theater in 2022, we did a version of my adaptation of A Christmas Carol that was very much informed by emerging from COVID. It was to everyone masked and socially distanced. We couldn't have many young people involved because they weren't vaccinated yet. We only ran it, 5 nights or 6 nights a week, the most, because we couldn't do 2 show days because of the need to clean everything after every performance. So we're now getting a chance to take on this story for reals, where we're really sort of being able to see it through, and so it's a completely new staging of it. A core of the script is the same, but there's a healthy number of new songs and other elements to it. So I promise you, if you saw the 2022 version, come now. It'll be both wonderfully similar and very different all at once, and hopefully to be as delightful. Oh, is it 2021, Katie?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right, because it was before. Yes, 2021. Thank you. See, losing track of time already. So now, I guess my first thing I want to ask you about is to just share a little bit of your history. I've mentioned that you're the artistic director of Theater Horizon. I thought, because it does inform a little bit of our approach to this production, if you want to talk a little bit about Pig Iron and some of just sort of also your background and how you got here.
Sure. Thanks everyone for having me. It's really good to be here. I'm in a rehearsal room at People's Light right now because we were doing some last minute casting of an 8-year-old today. So I feel like I'm ready. I'm getting ready for Tuesday already. So I grew up in Vermont. Zach and I have New England roots in common. And I actually, further random connections, came down to the area first to attend Swarthmore College. And really, while I was there, fell in love with the theater scene and met a lot of people working in the industry and stuck around. I left for a while and then moved back in 2013 and started piecing together a life as a theater artist, which for those of you who know people in the business is always a challenge in your 20s. So I was putting it together through teaching, through directing, working at several different Philly theaters where I really realized I not only loved the work that happened in rehearsal rooms, but also sort of the larger questions around our industry that all of you were already engaging in conversation about the purpose of it, the why of it, these questions about how we gather collectively, like what time do we start, right? What actually makes sense in people's lives? How can we have a collective experience where there are different opinions about that? And what can the arts do to sort of reflect on the human experience in a collective sense? So I became really interested in how institutions were asking those questions, worked at the Wilma Theater for about 3 years, and then realized that I was so interested in those questions. Artistic leadership I would like for it to be in my future. And I received a national fellowship from the Theater Communications Group. Some of you may know TCG just from your history with People's Light, to go work with other companies around the nation who had interesting approaches to community engagement, specifically, and art making, and how those things tied together. So that grant allowed me to be in residence at Pig Iron Theater. They're a physical theater company, and a lot of the approach to Christmas Carol is being informed by my work there. They run a graduate program in Philly. They're actually the only one of the only MFAs in devised performance, which means people who are making shows, sort of starting with a group of humans in the room instead of a script. And that's the approach they have. I still teach there once a week for a semester, and have a deep connection to that community. And one of the things I felt when Zach sent me the script was there's a real presence of physical theater and ensemble work that my history was based in it. So that was kind of what Wilma, Pig Iron, always directing and sort of teaching along the side. And then a little over 4 years ago, I became the artistic director of Theater Horizon in Norristown. And we're doing the work there. And that's how I met Zach. Was really, we thought, okay, we're both these theaters, part of the Philly theater community, but also separate from the Philly theater community, and we should talk. So we started emailing scripts back and forth and talking about all these questions about audiences, ticketing, programming, and how they all interplay, particularly how that's changed since the pandemic. So that's kind of how we first got connected, I think.
Indeed.
Mhm.
And Nell did, when we were all shut down, Nell directed a Zoom version of The Wolves for Philadelphia Theater Company that I think was one of the sort of best examples of Zoom theater that occurred during that period of time. And so when I was looking for directors for Christmas Carol, we started talking, and Nell had seen the earlier version, so could also talk a little bit about what she'd seen. But I think that interest in the physical work, the way of game playing and creating world building through bodies, through sort of shared imagination, and really inviting an audience to see something that isn't there, but suddenly you can see it there, which I love. That's one of the things I love so much about live theater. So you might say, suddenly I see a pole existing between two people, but there is no pole there. How is that possible? So there's all this sort of great sort of technique like that felt like it was in the world of Christmas Carol. I write in the forward. If you ever see the script, if it ever gets to be published, in the forward to Christmas Carol, I write about a man named Paul Walker, who was a professor at New York University, among various other places. He passed away of AIDS in the mid 1990s. I had the great fortune at New York Stage and Film in the summer of 1992 of studying games with him. And games is like that. It's these theater games that really help free up imagination, create ensemble building, all those kind of things. And Paul, even holding sort of a rolling oxygen tank, had more energy and power than I had ever witnessed any human being in any space. He was a spirit. And when I started thinking about what is it that the characters in Christmas Carol need, what is it that I need as a human, what I feel like our world needs, I was like, we need more Paul Walkers helping us feel like we're living bigger lives, feel like our heart is 7 times our size, feel like we can do anything, which is something he was able to make everybody feel like they could do. And so that's really where the essence of trying to write a version of Christmas Carol that wasn't the classic Victorian go at it, but that was something that was really where my hope is an audience will watch and go, it's amazing what human beings can do. It's just amazing what human beings can do. And that maybe that's a bit of an antidote to some of the cynicism that exists today, because we get to see what artists can do in space and all that. So I'm curious now, Christmas Carol in general. Before we even talk about this Christmas Carol, like have you had any contact with one before you did this? Did you grow up seeing it? Like, what's your history with Christmas Carol?
Yeah, I think I did, like many people, was first exposed to it as a kid. We didn't go every year, but I had definitely, seen a few productions and knew the story. And then I would say, it was something sort of that was part of my childhood and adolescence. And then as a theater person, I sort of moved away from it. And sort of that's why this inquiry to me was such a great challenge, because as a theater person, you hear, oh, this place is doing Christmas Carol, and this place is doing Christmas Carol. And you think, oh, okay, that's happening again, but what's the new play, or and so, when Zach reached out to me about it, at first, I thought, okay, maybe I need to face this, because this could be such an interesting challenge to say, okay, well, why are people drawn to this play? What is the thing about it that makes us want to watch it over and over again? Because I think if culturally this has existed for so many years and people are still showing up and those school districts are already booked, there is something about this piece that I need to pay attention to, and sort of like unearth the nostalgia a lot of people have around it, and almost treat it like a new play and say, okay, what is the driving force? What are the opportunities for imagination and engagement? And we can talk a little bit about the production concept in a minute, but I think for me, what I kept coming back to is that it's a play about transformation. I think one of the reasons why we love watching it is because we get to see a character do a complete 180 in one night, right? Scrooge is a terrible person, wakes up magically transformed, becomes very generous. And we rarely get to see that in a play. Usually we see characters change kind of gradually, right? Maybe someone makes a different choice at the end of the play, but this is a very unrealistic 180. And so it's a great challenge as a director to say, how can we explain that? How can we justify that? And how can we use the idea of transformation as a jumping off point to shape all of our other production choices around it? So that's been a really fun challenge for me, is to sort of now fall in love with Christmas Carol, which is not a relationship I had to it in the past. Just to really appreciate that it's a play about magic and transformation, and actually as theater people, that's what we do and value. So there's been something really beautiful about that for me.
When Barbie was out and the ads were all about, if you love Barbie, this movie's for you. If you hate Barbie, this movie is for you. That's how I think both Nell and I feel a little bit about Christmas Carol. Is like, we want to make something that if you love Christmas Carol, this production's for you. But also, if you hate Christmas Carol, there's something this production might be for you. In terms of the approach to the music, the storytelling, I think even some of the sort of the angle by which we're looking at character and character transformation and some of the sort of elements within the storylines about that. So you mentioned now the sort of production concepts. You want to talk a little bit about sort of the design that you're working with and how you're conceiving telling the story?
Yeah. So as I said, transformation was sort of my jumping off point. And we decided to have that be reflected in the visual world of the play. So I actually made sort of a non-traditional choice to hire a scenic designer, Stephen Dufala. He's part of the Dufala brothers, if people know of their work, to do the set. And so we're also having a lot of learning lessons about visual artists doing sets and what that means. But his concept is to create a world of object transformation. So it's not only characters and people we see transform, but how the set is physically put together. So you won't walk in and see this polished, fake kitchen and fake dining room and all of that. We really are asking the audience to use their imaginations and watch objects transform. So the set is really made up of 5 boxes and 5 windows that have secret magical tricks to them, but that transform in every scene and are motivated by the actors. So we kind of get to see the space transform, and also the actors, the ones doing the imagining of the space, sort of a game played by the cast and company to tell the story that Scrooge isn't able to access until the end. He doesn't have that power of imagination. So the visual world is going to be pretty spare, but I think will become quite magical. It's also sort of a challenge in that of how minimal can we go while still making it feel quite full and imaginative, and really ask the audience to lean in and have the experience of imagining with us.
Yeah, and there's there's a band of 5 musicians. Last time, if you saw it before, we had 3, but we had some of the actors playing instruments as well. This is leaning a little bit more on sort of an onstage band raised up in the sky, so that we could have a little bit more space in the theater for that kind of storytelling that Nell is describing. What would you say, Nell, is like a question that you don't yet know the answer to that you're going to be exploring as we get into rehearsals next week?
I would say this question of how much we imagine. I think one of the things the scenic designer, Steve and I have been talking a lot about our props, for example. So if we are asking the audience to pretend a box is a desk, for example, it would be sort of a strange world to be pretending that is happening and then have real mashed potatoes for the actors to eat on stage. So we're having all these conversations right now about, well, do we do real mashed potatoes? Do we do fake mashed potatoes? Do we do a shoebox that's pretending to be mashed potatoes, right? It's sort of how literal do we go, and how much are we asking the audience to imagine along with us? And that is something I think we will find the answers to in rehearsals and see what works, what's happening, what feedback we get along the way, and also why previews are so important. So I hope that some of you will come to previews to let us know what's working and what's not. So that's a big question for me right now, is how much are we asking the audience to imagine?
So speaking of that, in terms of the process of that, so the cast, that's going to be the first level of experimentation of imagining in that level. You want to talk a little bit about sort of the composition of the cast and what we've been looking for in the process, and since we're obviously still casting, since you're in the rehearsal room right now doing casting, sort of the priorities around that.
Sure. We have 10 adult actors and 6 young people who are broken up, really 12 young people broken up into 2 casts, or 7. Zach has reminded me. No, we have 6.
I think it's 6. Yeah, so 12 total.
Yeah. Who are broken up into 2 casts because it was going to be too much school for anyone to miss for all the matinees. So we have 2 groups of kids who are alternating performances and rehearsals. And I think in the adult actors especially, we were looking for people who, not to repeat myself, but who are willing to imagine this world with us. So some actors like to come in and be told, okay, you're going to stand here, you're going to say your line this way, then you're going to move, to this edge of the stage. And I think what we're really looking for are to people to generate and create a world with us. And not every actor, some actors love that and some actors don't. And so it's been really important. I keep saying no divas in this process as we're casting, to have people who are really, game to play. I keep saying game to try things and experiment, who have some physical theater skills, and also who have amazing vocal talent, which I think we've really found. We have some people who can really, really, really sing, who are going to be phenomenal. So those are the priorities we've been looking for, are really, I would say, vocal talent and physical theater ability, and then also just being very, very game to play.
There's some familiar faces and some new faces. So Ian Peaks, who played Scrooge before in 2021, I'll get that right this time, is returning to play Scrooge this time. And Tom Teddy, for those of you who know Tom, and Susan McKee are both returning to play the Fezziwigs. So those are the returns from before. And then Akeem Davis, who some of you may know from various different theaters around here, but most recently with us, I think, was in Sweat. Before that was in All My Sons, and he was in the Christmas Carol in Concert film, if you saw that when we did that during the COVID shutdown. Akeem is playing Bob Cratchit. I think there's other folks who are familiar. I think those are the 4 that have returned a number of times. And then there's newcomers, both local newcomers and sort of another group that are from out of town. So the local newcomers, I'm thinking, so Anna Leibovitz, right?
Lieberman, yeah.
Lieberman, sorry. Anna Lieberman, who, if you saw Head Over Heels at Theater Horizon, was in that. What else might folks know Anna?
And Madeline Garcia is the other local. And all the kids are local.
Oh, and all the kids, yes.
And we're still looking for one 8-year-old boy. So if you know anybody, send them our way.
That's right. Any 8-year-old boys?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, we could really use one. So it's a wonderful group, wonderful ensemble. Number of whom we've worked with before, number of whom we've never worked with before, and that's always a sort of interesting, exciting, frightening process of bringing people together and hoping that they gel. Because you never know what kind of alchemy may or may not occur as different groups of people come into the room together. Jacob asked about previews and how much changes during previews, and I think that really varies depending on the production. I'm going to say here, I hope we're not changing too much as we're in previews. I hope we're listening and learning and adjusting and tweaking and sort of changing dials, but maybe not having to replace the hardware during previews. But we just came from a process with Bones where I think of the 84 pages in the script, I think 55 of them were changed between the first preview and the last preview.
Wow.
So, and that cast was learning 20 pages of new dialogue in a day and trying it out that night in front of an audience. So it can be quite a lot. I've certainly gone through new play processes that are like that. And in fact, Christmas Carol, first time around, we sort of went through that a bit as well. But I'm really, really, really hoping that for example, I don't need to rewrite a song or replace a song in previews. That's my nightmare. That's the thing that wakes me up at 3 a.m. and go like, does that song just not work? And have I been in denial about it this whole time? So I don't know. Nell, what about you? What's your experience in previews?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the production and also the director. I'm quite restless, I would say, in terms of I would keep working on a show forever and it's only done because it has to open. And so in my mind, I do really take the rehearsal, because what allows you to make changes during preview, and the difference between preview and opening is after opening, you stop having rehearsal. But previews, typically, we're all rehearsing during the day. We have, maybe a 4 to 6 hour rehearsal. So that's the time, if there are changes, where you say, oh, okay, I want to look at that lighting look again. Can we have that actor stand there? Let's change that. That is your work time. So for me as a director, I feel like preview rehearsals are precious because you've just gotten feedback the night before from an audience. And then usually I have a work list of 90 things and I'm just racing across the clock for what can we accomplish in those 4 hours. But usually it's things, I would say, that feel more minor to an audience, like a light change, like a prop change, a change in somebody's blocking, a sound cue levels, rather than tons of new pages. So I've definitely been parts of processes as well where that's happened.
I mean, something that may be worth sharing is, for a piece like this, there's a pretty dramatic shift that's going to happen from the period of time that we're in the rehearsal room to when we get on stage, because we don't have the musicians with us during rehearsal. They come right at the end of the process. So we have a musician who's a music director who teaches the songs and plays the songs as the cast is learning it. But when we just before we get onto the stage, that's when the keyboardist and drummer and guitarist join us, so the music takes off in a new way when we get on the stage. Then of course, we're hoping to have some of the magic boxes and other things in the space to work with in the room, but we'll have many more of those elements that our production team will have built and have prepared for us once we get on stage. So there's a huge learning curve that happens during the 6 days of what are called tech rehearsals. When the company shifts to the theater before there's any sort of audience. And then there's another day of sort of dress rehearsals that, there might be invited folks coming or a few folks coming so we can take photographs, things like that, where we start sort of putting our toes in the water of other people seeing what we're doing. And then come previews. So the ingredient of the audience is huge no matter what. And certainly the actors are also, even just learning the tempo of the show, that gets adjusted and calibrated significantly during previews. But hopefully we're not having to do many rewrites and all that. I'm seeing a question in the chat. Oh, the Panto had elements that appeal to kids and another level that adults got. Will Christmas Carol have kid-friendly elements? Yes. is the quick answer. I think it's geared. We're trying to make a show that's for 6 to 106, and we mean it that way. And I think what I don't know, my response to watching some of the work, we did a workshop a little while ago that Nell led, that sort of investigated some of these physical theater techniques. And what I kept thinking is, well, this is what it's sort of returning us to what kids do naturally. And they get to see it now on a different scale, which is how kids use their imagination, how kids create worlds in the sandbox, how kids can make anything out of a cardboard box and some plastic tubing. That's sort of what they're going to see in a different sort of elevated version of that. So our hope is that kids will be like, oh, it will awaken imaginations that way. And certainly, yes, some of the sort of buffoonery and silliness and humor, I think young folks will like. But it's also working on hopefully a couple other layers and levels that adults will recognize as well. And the last thing I'd say is whenever kids are on stage, it is a dynamic that is hard to resist, I think, across generations. But watching other kids watch kids on stage is one of my favorite things in the world. So I am so glad this time around that we were able to include many more young people, both on stage and in the audience for it. Any other questions? Those were great. I loved all the questions you were sharing. And I'm really excited about this production. I'm really excited to be working with Nell. It's our first time working together in this capacity, but as Nell said, we've been feeling like we've been doing this now for a number of years. So it feels like at last we get to do this. There will be a few things for you to look out to. We're going to make another little library concert in the first round on Christmas Carol and our other musical shows that have happened in the past. We've brought in some of the artists into the Pat and Jane Lusk Library at People's Light, sort of like a tiny desk concert if you watch those with NPR. And we bring in the cast and do a couple of songs. So we're aiming to do that in the second week of rehearsal, and we'll then put that out into the world so you can hear some of the tunes. If you go to our website, you can see some of the sort of music that existed in different capacities. Both there's SoundCloud files that have some of the music. There's Jonathan Brooke, who's an old friend who did a piece called My Mother Has Four Noses that you might have seen if you came to People's Light for that. She's a wonderful recording artist, and she did me the favor of recording one of the songs, Tiny Tim's folk song. And so that recording is on the website as well, and some other ways of hearing music from the show. So that part you can get a little glimpse of right away. And I think that's probably the thing to know. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope if you're going to watch the Phillies, root loud. And I look forward to seeing you. Please do come early to all the shows, but especially Christmas Carol, because we really do need word of mouth. We're at a point now where pretty much press is not a reliable thing. Reviews almost never happen. And because, as we were talking about earlier, the nature of sort of the subscription model has been waning, so there are fewer people coming to the early performances to help spread the word about it. So the more that you can do that, the better. That's a really great way of helping People's Light in all theaters in the area. So thank you so much. I hope you have great evenings, and we'll talk to you and see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Jack.
Bye. Thanks
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Maybe we'll get you for one of these, David, in April, May. Thank you. Thank you, Nell.
Thank you, Zach. It was fun.
Get home to your little ones.
I will. Thanks. You take care.
Exciting concept for this for the Christmas Carol. Looking forward.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, let's hope. I'll feel better once we're in the rehearsal room making things and it's
As
not all
always,
just in my head. Yeah. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I hope to see you again soon. All right.
Take
Take
care.
care. Love
Bye.
you. Bye.